Okay. So it's giving me an option to pause the recording and
No.
stop the recording, but it's not giving me an option to record myself. So you may just
Hmm.
have to send me the recording. It's telling me
Okay.
that it is recording right
It
now.
is recording, yes. So you're
Yeah.
good.
So
Yeah. Okay. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Ann Sousa, founder of Healing the Global Village, owner of Global Firewalk Institute, and the creator to Soulful Mondays. And here we are, Monday, and Lord Shiva Day, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And I have with me amazing, amazing, for me, anyways, my experience with Reverend Kelli. And yeah, I'm very grateful, honored, and truly excited to have you here on Soulful Mondays with the Ann Sousa podcast. And thank you so much for being here and for all that you are. I'll let you introduce yourself as I let all my podcast guests so that you can claim on your seat and know that, we're here in relationship. And go ahead, Reverend Kelli.
Well, first, Anna, I just want to thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here because I love the energy that we share together.
Yes.
And I have been able, through my work with you and the fire, to just open up new aspects of myself and learn something about spiritual saturation that I was unclear on. So I'm really grateful to you for that, among other things, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. If I were to introduce myself, I would say that I see myself as a change agent, an alchemist, a person who is always looking for newness, for the freshness of God. I am the founder of the Grow Continuum, which is a ministry based around four principles. The word grow is a mnemonic for each of those principles, and they're more long and detailed than I could lay out simply. But if I were to describe them very quickly, the G is God first, last, and always. The R is remembering our own divinity. The O is oneness with others. And the W is without fear, worry, or regret, and with faith, love, and authenticity. And
Mhm.
our primary principle is that the individual creates their own relationship with higher self, God, divinity, and we come together in fellowship to experience each other as we are experiencing God. So we aren't about a lot of rules and regulations. We have a few guiding principles, but it's really all about getting more and more deeply and more saturated with spirit. So that is the ministry. I've written a book called I Am at Work, and that book is just another piece of the puzzle because my personal primary belief is that we want to experience God wherever we are and whatever we're doing. And for me, as an attorney, I experienced a lot of disconnection when I was at work and a lot of conflict where the spirit in me wanted to do one thing and the part of me that wanted to win wanted to do something else. And what I realized was when I surrendered the winning into spirit, I won anyway and at a higher level than that which I would have manipulated through my own actions. So I wanted other people to be able to do that, and I wrote a book about it. And those are the two things that are really on my mind for self introduction right now.
Beautiful, beautiful. And tell me, where are you geographically?
I'm located in Washington, D.C.
Okay, very good.
Recently, I purchased a home in my hometown of Galesburg, Illinois. So at some point, I would like to do some spiritual work there also. But for now, we're here and we consider ourselves global because of the global reach of technology and the way that we have so many people around the world that are part of the work that we're doing.
Beautiful. And this is a ministry people can sign up for?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The best way to find us and connect with us is Facebook. We have a face group. Uh, we have a Facebook group of over 1,000 members, and we also have a page there on Facebook.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I'm going to definitely look that up myself and
Grow
be-
Continuum.
grow continue. Beautiful. And we will too. Me and my staff will, post this, link this. We'll follow this through after the recording and send that to you as well. And, keep following it through. And okay, beautiful. So we are at 11:11. And this is the time that we have a moment of silence for humanity's soul. So thank you so much for joining in with this. Blessings. Thank you so much. Mhm. And so, yes, Reverend Kelli also has us on Clubhouse. So I just want to say, welcome, Reverend Kelli, to Soulful Mondays with Ann Sousa. And we're very excited to have you here. And, as I've said to many of the guests here live or those that are watching, Soulful Mondays is really just that, looking to talk to people of all walks of life, not just like-minded people. I'm not interested in just like-minded people. I want to talk to all people in humanity because we all have soul, and particularly the ones that are out in the world, doing life and however they are, and on the front lines, forgetting because of the compliance, the mundane, get up, go to work, go home, go to bed, get up, go to work, go home, go to bed. There's something that happens. I've been in corporate America for several years, and there's like a falling to sleep at the wheel, so to speak. Thank you for also pinpointing as an attorney wanting that win. And then what I heard you say, every single guest I love, just, as I've always said here, we're real raw and uncut, there's nothing edited here. And what I love, you said, every single guest also speaks in their own way, is that you wanted the win and you also wanted to feel that relation with spirit. And there was this moment. I see it in each one of my guests. It's profound, actually, as a witness, and I feel very honored and blessed. And many viewers also have commented about it, that you see that moment where a conscious choice came forward. So if you can just talk a little bit, in your own way, about that conscious choice, because at the end of this, I also reference and talk about that we can live in the world and we don't have to be worldly, and that we also can have all that we want in the desires, dreams, and visions, and even in the material world of what we obtain and work hard for. And knowing that when we die, it doesn't go with us. So we came in with soul and we're leaving with soul. So what,
That's
you know,
absolutely. First, I neglected to actually show my book, which I'd like to do, and
thank you.
I don't know if that is even seeable because of.
Yeah, yeah, actually, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Um, so what this book was about for me, and it answers your question directly, is that choice point that we often feel like I don't know why. I don't know if it's because we've seen so many movies or if we've seen so many people in our lives. I'll call it cut corners, manipulate reality. Um, do it in a way that is just a little slippery. I'll call it that. And I know a lot of people already think attorneys are slippery. And I will say that we are no more slippery than our clients. That's another story for another day. But the point is, the client wants to win, the attorney wants to win, and the question is, what path are we going to take to accomplish that? And there are so many things, and I always say this, there are so many things that are legal and doable, but not necessarily correct in your spirit. Even if they are ethically correct within the boundaries of our ethical code, they still may not feel good. And so when you get into that space where you're not feeling good about what you do, and you experience that day after day, hour after hour, it wears away at
much.
your being. It wears away at your happiness. It wears away at your connection. And pretty soon, just like you said, you're in that sleep dullness, or worse yet, Ann, you have an artificial charge that you're living off of.
Oh,
You're
wow.
living off of the charge of money, off of the charge of recognition, even off of the charge of your own excellence. Conquering. This is, we are a country that has often cheered the conquerors. And so that arrogance of knowing that you can apply yourself to achieve a new reality that wins for you. Either it wins money, it wins applause, it wins prestige, whatever it is.
Status.
It's very intoxicating. And that can become its own addiction. So, realizing that and being caught in the throes of it, I wanted to make a different choice for myself, because I was very much in the other part of my life very, very spiritual. And these two things were not playing well together. And so I started thinking about what would happen if I allowed spirit to manipulate the reality and spirit to bless the outcomes, and totally surrendered myself into that. What would that look like? And go ahead.
I want to ring the bell for that. I really do, because thank you so much. Yes, keep going.
And what I discovered about that was that we would get the higher outcome. So instead of my client necessarily conquering the other client, which my client might be thrilled about that, but that might not be the most just outcome, right? I could, through spirit, create outcomes that my client and the other side would feel is just, because we're working with a higher level principle that is raining down truth on the entire interaction. And so, having had that experience a number of times, and I could give you a really great example.
Please do.
I mediate cases, and through my mediation, we have a code of conduct. And part of the code of conduct is who and when you can talk to about what in staying neutral. And so, before I had a party come to me, and he came to me because he wanted me to represent him in a child custody case. And basically he wanted me to slam his partner because she had a new significant other and was blocking him from seeing the child. And he wanted me to go after her. He's upset, right? And so I said, well, let's try a different approach, because I always want to mediate a situation before litigating it. And so basically, I convinced him to let me mediate. I convinced him to let me call her. We were scheduling the mediation sessions, but because of their schedules, they were going to be a bit out. And in the meantime, he wanted to see his daughter. And because of how he had been to her, very aggressive, she didn't want to let him do it. And so I basically had a separate conversation with her in which I encouraged her, which usually I'm not an encourager. I'm letting people come to agreements on their own. But I began to coach her. And through this coaching, she agreed to allow him to see the child. The child went for an overnight, and I was waiting to see how the overnight had turned out. I didn't hear from him. I didn't hear from her. And I was just mind boggled and, a little bit concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But Spirit had told me to do this. Don't follow the traditional track. Do this. Well, when I finally heard from one of them, it was from her. And what she told me was that he had died shortly after the overnight. So he had a heart attack on his couch. Point being, none of that other stuff mattered. Litigation didn't matter. His aggressiveness didn't matter. What mattered was him and his daughter having a last chance to bond. That's what spirit can do. That was a win. It was a win for everybody. Can you imagine how this woman would have felt if he had died and she had withheld the daughter? What it would have done to their relationship when the daughter was old enough to realize that had happened. So those are the kinds of things that when we surrender ourselves, and it really is challenging because corporations and businesses are coming up with so many rules to hold us in place and dictate our actions so that we cannot even often exercise our own divine power of discernment and will and choice.
The compliance.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
the
compliance. It's almost as if there is a move to turn us into some sort of artificial intelligence where we're just, if A, then B. Oh, here's A, B. Here's A, B. And no thinking along the lines.
Mm-hmm.
And so my book is really for all people, no matter what your profession is, to just take a breath, step back from that, and feel into yourself, feel into spirit, to see what is being asked of you in the moment. It's about fully presencing yourself, no matter where you are, but most specifically in the workplace.
Wow. Thank you so much for this, Reverend Kelli. And when I was listening to you, I just had such this sense, this feeling of you not just being a mediator, an attorney in the laws of law, but the words came to me, soulful law, like this, through this mediation, through this gift in your gift of presence that you really do hold. I felt it when you did my training in the firewalk, that you're actually creating the healing, and that testament right there rings true, huh? That doing this mediation from this bigger expansive consciousness of God, whatever people want to call that, brought about this last time for this father to be with their daughter, and that mother who allowed that through your wisdom of taking off that attorney hat, that mediator hat, putting on your coach's hat, and really just expanding in those skills of relationship and building relationship and listening to the divine consciousness. I mean, it's really quite remarkable. And, this is the pinnacle to Soulful Mondays. And the other thing I heard you say, for your own revelation, aha, knowing that you wanted to become more saturated in that consciousness, the flame of God, the spirit of God, whatever you want to call it, was that you weren't willing to sell your soul.
Yes.
And this is the archetype of the prostitute. And I talk about that here. And we're not talking about sex, folks. We're talking about we take on a job, a task, a status, a materialism, a desire, a want of something we want. And then because we're in the compliance of it, we then end up selling out our soul
Yes.
to do whatever the job, the situation, the circumstance. And what I love is you realizing that no, I'm not selling out my soul. I'm going to go to that divine consciousness, and together in relationship with your God, you're going to figure out in this judicial system, which has its own, taxing, as you said, it's like it's about the win. And, because when I think of the law, it to me feels like it comes from that Manipura chakra, the solar plexus, which is the firehouse. And it's all our relations, but it's also the seat of the ego,
Yes.
where one can achieve and be successful and drive, and I'm going to win and do all of that. And that's great and that's fine to a point, because eventually the self-centered self will burn out.
Yes.
The soulful self will continue to expand and expand.
Well, the interesting piece of this for me, because it is, I am a lawyer, and when I say that, I mean that is also divine assignment, and so the lawyering continues outside of a job, outside of anything, because that too was an initiation, learning how to think like that, and it's very difficult to turn that off. So, for example, in most conversations, with the exception of maybe conversations with other lawyers, I know how to win an argument. But it is not appropriate for me to win all arguments because I'm often wrong. So you see, I can know I am wrong and still beat you in an argument over whether I am wrong. And so then it takes some humility and some discipline and some allegiance to the truth to be able to dial that back and say, "Oh my goodness, I am wrong," and allow the other person the space to be right, as opposed to just conquering because I can. And that is something that all of us in our skills, abilities, talents, divine gifts have to learn. And when people don't learn that, it can be very, very dangerous. Because even if you are a manifester, if I want to manifest your house, that might not be so good for you, right?
Exactly.
So all of it is a discipline, and I think those of us who do saturate ourselves in spirit, there is a responsibility also, and an accountability that comes upon us when we aren't doing it appropriately. So I'm constantly in the process of also disciplining myself.
Mm-hmm. It's, I'm listening to you and it's like you're between the worlds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is, yeah. You know,
Yeah.
and I know that you are a follower. Well, I don't want to call it a follower. I know that you study him also, but his name is escaping me. Malidoma.
Melodoma, yes.
Yes, the way that he talks about being a bridge between worlds, the West and his own country. I feel like a bridge between professional and spiritual worlds often, because I can see a situation through both of those lenses. And even, the other day I was in a space and I was with a bunch of people in a room and we were talking about Clubhouse and our experiences, and the people somehow switched gears into a very what I consider to be a very anti-gay conversation.
Mm.
And I mean, they were way out there, and at the same time, they thought themselves to be very open
Mm.
and
Interesting.
allowing. And so it was just so weird for me because, on the one hand, I wanted to devour them. I wanted to conquer them. I wanted to put them in their place and, that kind of thing. And that was from a place of offense because,
Mhm.
here I am, a queer person in this room. You've looked at my bio, you know that about me, and you're
Mhm.
still saying these horrible things. And you're walking around the world saying these things, thinking that you are open and accepting of gay people. And
Mm.
and so there really had to be a discipline in me to say, I need to stay in loving relationship with these people so that I can help them see that they are not being who they think they're being in the world. Can you imagine how innocent they were?
Mm.
Because they thought they were the good people. Not to say good and bad, but they thought they had a right understanding and a right relationship with allowing and accepting people who were gay.
Mhm.
They could not realize and did not know how what they were saying was so deeply offensive. As they were saying things like, the gayness should not be rammed down our children's throat. Robin, why has Robin got to be a homosexual? You're trying to, I mean, a bisexual. Why does he have to have any sex? I just want my kids to be protected. And so these were things that they felt in their heart. They were afraid,
Mhm.
and they were telling their version of the truth.
Mhm.
So it was really hard for me. And it's hard for me because these people were black people like me. They understood what it meant to experience oppression, and they did
Mm.
not in any way see themselves as being a part of a system of oppression. But we have to be in loving relationship in order to be heard. In my opinion.
Yes, you hit the nail right there. Because if we go at it in a combative way, then the whole system of, sender receiver is totally shut down. There is no effective way of communication
Yeah.
and therefore healing. And that's one of the things I heard when you were referencing your mediation. And, to me, it's like you're a guardian. It's almost like you're a gatekeeper. I know in the fire walking I talked about, because the element of fire is the gateway to the spirit world. Fire clan is the gatekeeper. So, I really just want to take a moment here and see you in this integrity. And it's what I felt with you when I taught you the firewalk certification,
Thank
um,
you.
and
I received that.
how you hold that, even if there's a trigger to a wound.
Yeah.
And this here is where it's like the rubber meets the road. It's where the little girl or the woman stands present.
Yes.
And I was sharing with you offline as well that today launches for me a 21-day mental detox. And I belong in some, beautiful spiritual group communities. And I've gone into those pockets of those groups and said, I'm out for 21 days. I'm checking out for a little bit, and I'm going to go in to where my thoughts, words, and actions are, and what is externally penetrating and influencing my thoughts, words, and actions,
Uh-huh.
and kind of bringing that in. And it's interesting, Reverend Kelli, because I was sharing this yesterday with my elder Mary Court, who watches. Hi, Mia. She's loving my YouTubes here. But anyways, I was sharing with her for the last several weeks. I would just be randomly doing something and I would hear this like a whoosh and a wave of wind come in. Go to the one.
Oh,
Go to the one, Ian. Go to the one. And it's like capital THEONE. And it's like a calling to just go deeper in and sit with the shadow of me, sit with the impurities of me, the imperfections of me, and love all of it.
yes.
And then come back into wherever, and choosing when that that 21-day mental detox, you were asking a little bit about that. you know um, I do it probably several times a year, and it's just a way to actually kind of reconfigure. And when we think about what is really penetrating us on any given day between the social media, the conversations that are, we're so into the technology, the online, everything that's going on. And my family and I, we went to church on Sunday, and that pastor, Pastor Q, over there at the chapel, he said this, that they're doing a master relationship class, and the first topic was about criticism and the
Oh,
critics. And he went into a little bit of the life of Jesus, and boy, did he get criticized and critic, right?
yes.
Right to the end of on the cross. And he used this about Jesus and said, but how you can tell that Jesus didn't hold it against the ones that said he was fake, he wasn't real, he was in the synagogues preaching, and or whatever it was. And he said, because at the end of his life, he didn't say he would die for just this one, this one, this one that believed in him. He died for all. And yeah, it was a nice little remembrance, and it actually just reaffirmed for me and how we really do need to pull those energetic tentacles back once in a while to kind of reconfigure, reset ourselves from some of the external communication, talking, beliefs, values, and norms of people. And I think that these times, since 2020 and 2021 and wherever else we're going with all the 20s, um, is I'm hearing a lot of this, that people that thought that they knew somebody in their level of intelligence and their level of common sense, that there's some form of I mean, for myself, I'm actually in a deprogramming
Mm-hmm.
some of those programming in those compliance system structures and paradigms. So if we, know how to do some of that resetting of some of that, programming, it can be quite beneficial. Um, and if not, then we just get sucked up into a current of energy, and then we're in that mundane get up, go to work, go home, go to bed, and we're disconnected from the soulful self.
Well, I love one of the things that you have taught me, and that you introduced into my life in a much bigger way through my work with you, was this idea of purification.
Mm. Yeah.
And even we must even purify the vision that we have of who another person is. Uh,
Yes.
I have realized for myself that I'm often caught up in the illusion of a person, and it is internally created, and so it never matches with what I'm seeing on the outside, and then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I get irritated that it doesn't match, as if what I think in my head is actually real. So it's a fascinating thing. I heard a young man He is a breatharian, and I've been sort of looking at his information. Very fascinating young guy, but he said everyone is always healing, no matter how little they're working on it. Inside them, somewhere, there is a core aspect of them that is actively healing who they are. So when we look at them from that perspective, we're able to have compassion for what we see, because we realize we are looking at a being that is in a healing process. And it might look crazy.
Well,
And yeah.
yeah. And when we talked about that when I taught the gross chaotic fire,
Yes.
and how you cannot invite somebody to your nice refined fire until you actually sit with your gross, messy, chaotic fire. And I think in this times of the world, we're seeing a lot of like veils are being removed, and we're seeing a lot of the gross, chaotic, messy, uh, dark aspects, shadow aspects of our brothers and sisters. And yeah, it's great, big, huge, as Carolyn May says, in that shadow work. And I just, want to say again, what I love about you is the integrity that you see what you see, you go in, pull all of your imperfections up and out, and then are able to really, bring your medicine. So tell me a little too. You do coaching as well?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. So
And very often and this is just as spirit would have it. That's what I always say, not a coincidence, but as spirit would have it, many of the people who come to me to be coached are people who are experiencing this sort of disconnect with work. It's very fascinating because, for example, when I first started coaching, one of my clients was another attorney, and she had been unable to pass the bar. And she was trying to take the California bar because she wanted to practice law in the physical location where a good friend of hers had died. But she kept taking the California bar and failing it. No fault of her own, because it's one of the most difficult bars in the country to pass.
okay.
So in my opinion, there was some sort of connection that she had with this person that had died, and that connection both kept her from passing the bar and kept her from taking a bar that she could pass. Because as long as she was in the struggle, she was in his heroic story with this man, right? So we got her out of that and got her to try to take an easier bar, which happened to be the bar of the place where she actually lived, because her whole plan was take the California bar, move to California, and be in the place where my good friend, I don't think he was even a lover, where my good friend died, and, fight the good fight there on his behalf. But she lived in DC. So it's like, let's start with taking the DC bar. Well, she took the DC bar. She passed the DC bar. She created a life for herself in DC. So all she needed to do was disconnect from an idea, and that's what I say, that these illusions, and especially because I have ADD, I live in that a lot more probably than your average person. I realize today that when people are telling me something that I don't want to hear, I physically cannot understand what they are saying. It's almost like they are talking to me in Charlie Brown language. It's not till after that I'm doing a thing connected with it, and I'm like, oh, a person said something about this. What were they saying? And it comes back to me later. So I'm very familiar with the way that illusion can play with us because it
Mhm.
plays with me a lot.
Mm.
And one of the techniques that I have to use is to just ground myself in spirit. So spirit tells me what to do. I didn't hear what I was supposed to do from the person, but now I can go to spirit and say, Spirit, what was I supposed to do? And I might figure out something that had nothing to do with what they said,
Mm.
but that really, really works in the moment.
Yeah.
And to me, I just feel like God loves us that way. God loves us to find us a solution and let us be at peace whenever we're willing to come and say, help. So
Help.
I try to
Yeah.
say, come very often.
Beautiful. And you know what I heard you say too with that woman wanting to go to California is we bind ourselves up with some of these loyalties,
Yes.
so when we can really release the dysfunctional loyalties and the ancestral and the karmic loyalties, and even in relation to friends, then we can be more authentic to ourselves soulfully,
Yeah.
and not from what the mind is saying, this is what you have to do, this is what you have to do, in that like compliance place. And then I just want to say too, you did share with me when I did a private counsel with you before you did my firewalk training, and you shared about the ADHD, the ADD, yeah,
ADD. Uh-huh.
ADD. And I said, well, I have another theory to that. And what I say in work when I do also coaching with people with ADHD, ADD, is there's a way you can spin that to really maximize that you're actually a master tracker.
Oh, yes, I remember us talking about that.
Yes. And
Absolutely.
so, I think actually the DSM-4, the DSM-5 actually now has an addendum to that about ADD and ADHD are trackers. So I'll have to confirm that myself, but I think a few years back there was some kind of addendum to that.
Oh,
So
could you send me that when you find it? And can you say a little bit more about what it means to be a master tracker?
yes, so there's again, and that's in the house of spirit, because when we can, let's just say, open up a channel of the Sahasrara, the crown chakra, open ourselves in the chakra systems enough to take in the perceived information intuitively through the third eye, and do the purification and do the kriya. I do kriya purifications every morning, and whether it's yoga, meditation. So there's ways that we can kind of thin ourselves out so that we can be more receptive to listen to the message of the flame of God, the spirit of God,
Yes.
and become more in alignment, soulfully navigating, than the mundane compliance navigating. And so when we are in that space, then we can also, there's like a heightenedness that comes from the third eye. There's an awareness, there's a perception, there's ways to like decalcify the pineal gland to expand the third eye, right? And so when we can do some of these purifications, these practices, then we can become like, I'm talking to you, but periodically you would see me look this way because there's a butterfly and there's um, a cardinal on the bird feeder. Now, somebody looking at me could say, oh, they can't hold their attention.
Yes.
For me, though, it's more about the tracking.
Ah, I
And,
gotcha.
and I'm tracking it from that there's other energies coming into the synergetic current to what I'm sitting in. And so once I can bring those other energies in, it expands the synergy of the current or the field to what I'm in.
I got you. I'm
Yes.
yeah. I took all that in,
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. So,
and that feels true because you're right that sometimes what is playing out around me is more significant than what I'm hearing. And
Mm,
um, the way that I was receiving it is that spirit doesn't even need for me to hear what this person is saying, because that's not going to be true. Like when they're saying these kind of negative things, those things are not going to be the reality. So no need for me to even A, get myself flustered because of what they're saying, or B, somehow take that on as truth,
mhm.
when spirit is stirring up a new truth that will
Beautiful.
be a bigger truth than whatever this is. And
Hmm.
so I think that that's why a lot of things are even blocked. And I have noticed that my whole life. Like, you know how people are like, I think those people are talking about me over there. I could never even hear that. Like if someone said to me, I think that they were talking about you. It's like, what were they saying? What happened? So I'm just, it's not even there. And that's a very free way of being, and I feel like that's one of my blessings from spirit, not to even have to hear these toxic kinds of messages, because then you have to clean them out, right?
Beautiful. Yes, absolutely. And isn't that so amazing for each of us to be able to say, as I say here in Soulful Mondays, there's a soulful menu. And, to navigate with a soul GPS,
Yes.
is its choice and its consciousness. And sometimes in that choice of consciousness, there could also be goodbyes along the way.
Oh, yes.
Because as we elevate and expand our own soulful level of consciousness, what worked 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, doesn't necessarily. And this is in the laws of evolution. And the laws of evolution will actually void out something that did work 6, 7 months ago, 6, 7 weeks ago. And it's just evolution. And for myself personally, this is why I do the purification. This is why I don't particularly always love to do the purifications. you know uh, However, I know the benefits that it brings about, and so that requires a little discipline, a little bit of structure, and weeding out some of the external noise in my channels, because then I can focus from here and be more in the one, in the presence.
Let me ask you this. I remember in some of our past conversations, you've talked about the contract work that you
Mm-hmm.
did with your partner who has transitioned,
Yeah,
and you've talked about couples doing contract work together.
yeah.
Is this contract work a way for couples to ensure that, as you said, their time doesn't expire because one person's moving in one direction and the other is moving in another direction? Is it a way for those couples to come together and agree upon a joint work?
Yeah, beautiful question. Thank you for asking that. Yes, so I do a lot of work with couples, and what I have seen and what the feedback I've gotten in that is, it's like our iPhones, right? We have to update it, we have to
Yes.
reboot it. So this is similar to the contract work. There's like, okay, when you first met, these situations, circumstance, life energy systems were here. And then time and space and evolution and, shifts and change happen. So when I can have a couple come together and go through the contract work, there is a rebooting. I have a couple couples now that I'm working with, um, and so there's a way that you can acknowledge it for how exactly it is in real time. And then you do that rebooting, I guess that's what I'll call it. And now you're in this date, this space, this time, and this frequency, field, and current of energy. with the dynamics of the two
Yes.
versus trying to be 30 years back here in this date, time, space. So it's like you actually they feel it. It's almost like, and now they're present.
I
And
like
that in
that.
itself is, it's like a weight off there's like an energetics that they have shared over time that they become current and present in their own energetic system body and then the own dynamics between them. So thank you for asking that question. It's great work, contract work. It's beautiful.
And I would imagine, I'm just going to guess here, that sometimes when you get current, you might realize that your journey together is complete. If
Yes.
if the as you said, if what you're doing today is based on an allegiance to the past
Mm-hmm.
and the past experiences, it seems like if you come current, you might conclude that in this present time, there's nothing for you to do together.
Sure. Yes, that's happened. I had a few years back two married students, females that were in my apprenticeship, and they were like, okay, that's it, I'm leaving. It's like, whoa, 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 hold on, hold on, hold on. Let's have you do it from a real ownership and go through all your internal guts to see any parts and pieces. And one was 9 months, the other was a year. But when those women stood and said, I'm really complete, they actually loved their husbands more in the divorcing
Uh,
than from an angry, resentful place because they were in full ownership.
yes,
And
I
so very,
understand that.
very, very empowering. So let me ask you, Reverend Kelli, what might you gift and suggest here? I always like to ask the, podcast guests, do you have any recommendation in the times of the world that we're in that you would recommend for the listener to soulfully connect? What ritual, offering, meditation, some kind of wisdom within yourself? Obviously, we'll have anyone that's interested to reach out, and we'll make
Yeah.
sure we copy all your information there too.
What I would encourage people to do, and what I am now in the process of doing for myself, is to identify other people that you can get to be a part of your spiritual support team. Because all of us are experiencing times that can be so down the rabbit hole in terms
Mm-hmm.
of, off to the side, down the rabbit hole, up in the rainbow, all these different places that we can be, even in our spiritual practices.
Yes.
You know, that it is good to have someone who you can reach out to help you stay grounded
Mm-hmm.
and clear.
Beautiful.
So, community is my number one offering right now because, even in my own meditation, even in my own uh, process of adopting new spiritual practices, I can become so self consumed that I really don't have a clear picture of where I am. It's like
Mm.
sometimes when you're in a pool full of water, you don't know if you're close to the edge, if you're in the middle, or where you are because you're consumed in it. And it's always good to have someone who's standing on the outside of your particular pool who can say, there you are.
Mm,
You're,
beautiful.
you're, you're 10 feet from the edge. If
Yeah.
you swim a little bit to the left, you can reach your hand out and
Mm-hmm.
climb out. It's good to have that, and I think that we should all seek to have a wise counsel of human beings. I know that we all have our spiritual guides, of course, but of human beings that can say, hey, you know, are, are you okay? Are you okay? That
Yes,
kind of thing.
I
You
agree.
know?
Definitely having the check and balances. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for my spiritual practice, one of the things that I am doing, because I'm also feeling called into a purification process, is beginning a fasting regimen to really detox and get lighter in my spirit by controlling what goes into my body and how my
Mm,
body processes that I put inside of it.
beautiful. Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. And any last words you want to say to the guest here, to the
I
viewer?
just want to say I hope you all are watching these spiritual Mondays because they're awesome and Ann is awesome and I'm so
Thank
glad to have had an opportunity to be a part of it. And
you.
I just thank you for who you are in my life. And
Mhm. Truly, yes. Ditto and back at you, Reverend
yeah,
Kelli. Uh, you are a beacon of light, and we'll make sure we, you know, connect people to you so they have access to you. And thank you so much for sharing your book and your wisdom and your website. And did you share your website?
I think that I sent it to your team,
Okay,
but
beautiful.
for all who
Yep.
want to know, it is the website is really around the book, and it is I am the word at, even though the book has the symbol at, I am at work.info.
Beautiful. Excellent. And so I, say thank you again to Reverend Kelli here and to all the viewers that are watching now or later. I thank you. And remember, in Soulful Mondays here, as I say, you can live in the world and you don't have to be worldly, and you can bring your gifts. Please, we invite you, we encourage you. Please bring your gifts. Reverend Kelly's parting comments here about community is right on. And I will share this. Dr. Maladoma Somé, my brother from another mother, is what we call each other. And I remember he once said to me, we were sitting out in nature smoking a cigar, sitting on a stump. His cigars, we were smoking, and we were just talking and cheering as we often did. And he said, when you get to the top, and I said, uh-huh. And he said, and you look around, and I said, uh-huh. And he said, and nobody's there. And I go, uh-huh. And he said, you really went nowhere. And this was so beautiful. And this was the essence of wherever you go, it is a must that you bring community.
Yes.
So, community is an amazing remedy. I've learned in the West African Dagara culture tradition, as well as the culture my mother brought me in community, will remedy 99.9% of whatever ails us.
Yes.
So it is quite a medicine in the law of itself. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for being here, all of you. And have a blessed Monday in all the ways that you soulfully choose to navigate and feast off the soulful menu of your life. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann.
All right. So 1 second here.